The Senate will come to order. Senator Westland.
Good morning, Mr. President. I impose a call of the Senate.
The Senate is now under call. Well, you don't have to worry about taking your earrings off. I'm trying to see who. Jessica seemed to be working with someone. Oh. Senator Westland.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that further proceedings under the roll call be dispensed with and the Sergeant-at-Arms be instructed to bring in the absent members.
On that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Members, if you would be so kind as to stand. In our Senate tradition, before each session, floor session, we always begin with prayer. And today's chaplain is Reverend Yolanda Williams from Fritley United Methodist Church. And following the prayer, please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. Creator Spirit, spread your power through this place. Creator Spirit, spread your power through this place. Grant to all these gathered here your sense of justice, empowered by love. Creator Spirit, send your power to this place. Creator Spirit, spread your mercy through this place. Creator Spirit, spread your mercy through this place. Grant to all these gathered here your inspiration and your grace. Creator Spirit, spread your mercy in this place. To these elected to be the voice of the greatest to the least, to these elected to carry the needs of so many in their hearts, to these elected to be the face of justice to whom they serve. Creator Spirit, spread your mercy, spread your power, spread your wisdom. Creative Spirit, spread your spirit through this place. Amen.
Thank you, members. The Secretary will take the roll.
Abler, Anderson, Barr, Bolden, Carlson, Champion, Clark, Coleman, Swadzinski, Dames, Dibble, Dornick, Draheim, Drazkowski, Duckworth, Farnsworth, Fateh, Frentz, Green, Grunhagen, Gustafson, Hochschild, Herr, Heinzmann, Hoffman, Housley, Howe, Jasinski, Johnson, Johnson Stewart, Klein, Coran, Kroon, Kunish, Kupek, Lang, Letts, Liskey, Limmer, Lucero, Mann, Marty, Matthews, May Quaid, McEwen, Miller, Mitchell, Mohammed, Murphy, Nelson, Umuver-Baton, Pappas, Pa, Port, Pratt, Putnam, Rarick, Rasmussen, Rest, Seeberger, Utke, Weber, Wiesenberg, Westland, Westrom, Wickland, Zhang.
Members, a quorum is present. The following members intend to vote from a remote location pursuant to Rule 40.7. Senator Duckworth. Members, if you want to follow along on today's calendar, I am reading from Senate Agenda dated Tuesday, May 13th, 2025. We'll begin at the third order of business, messages from the House. The Secretary will read the message.
Mr. President, I have the honor to announce the passage by the House of the following Senate files herewith returned. Senate File Number 908, a bill for an act relating to construction codes modifying provisions governing the certification of underground telecommunications installers. And Senate File Number 2200, a bill for an act relating to evidence making restorative practices, statements, and documents inadmissible in civil and criminal proceedings. Signed, Patrick Duffy Murphy, Chief Clerk, House of Representatives.
Members, no action is required. The Secretary will read the next message.
Mr. President, I have the honor to announce that the House has acceded to the request of the Senate for the appointment of a conference committee consisting of 6 members of the House on the amendments adopted by the House to the following Senate file. Senate File Number 1832, a bill for an act relating to state government. There has been appointed as such committee on the part of the House Pinto, Greenman, Frazier, Baker, Zalesnikar, and Meckland. Senate File Number 1832 is herewith returned to the Senate. Signed, Patrick Duffy Murphy, Chief Clerk, House of Representatives.
Again, members, no action is required. The Secretary will read the next message.
Mr. President, I have the honor to announce that the House refuses to concur in the Senate amendments to House File Number 2130. House File Number 2130, a bill for an act relating to public safety, extending the length of driver's license revocations related to certain offenses. The House respectfully requests that a conference committee of 4 members be appointed thereon. Kraft, Mueller, Whitty, and Myers have been appointed as such committee on the part of the House. House File Number 2130 is herewith transmitted to the Senate with the request that the Senate appoint a like committee. Signed, Patrick Duffy Murphy, Chief Clerk, House of Representatives.
Senator Friends, on behalf of Senator Latz.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate accede to the request of the House for a conference committee on House File Number 2442, and that a conference committee of 3 members be appointed by the Subcommittee on Conference Committees on the part of the Senate.
Senator Friends is 2130. Thank you, members, for your patience. Senator Friends.
Why, thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate accede to the request of the House for a conference committee on House File Number 2130, and that a conference committee of 3 members be appointed by the Subcommittee on Conference Committees on the part of the Senate to act with a like conference committee appointed on the part of the House.
On that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The Secretary will read the next message.
Mr. President, I have the honor to announce that the House refuses to concur in the Senate amendments to House File Number 2442. House File Number 2442, a bill for an act relating to energy, appropriating money for energy and renewable development account programs and activities. The House respectfully requests that a conference committee of 4 members be appointed thereon. Acom, Kraft, Swazinski, and Sexton have been appointed as such committee on the part of the House. House File Number 2442 is herewith transmitted to the Senate with a request that the Senate appoint a like committee. Signed, Patrick Duffy Murphy, Chief Clerk, House of Representatives.
Senator Friends for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. I move that the Senate accede to the request of the House for a conference committee on House File Number 2442, and that a conference committee of 3 members be appointed by the Subcommittee on Conference Committees on the part of the Senate to act with a like conference committee appointed on the part of the House.
To that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The message prevailed. The Secretary will read the next message.
Mr. President, I have the honor to announce that the House refuses to concur in the Senate amendments to House File Number 2563. House File Number 2563, a bill for an act relating to legacy, appropriating money from outdoor heritage, clean water, parks and trails, and arts and cultural heritage funds. The House respectfully requests that a conference committee of 4 members be appointed thereon. Vang, Hussein, McDonald, and Scraba have been appointed as such committee on the part of the House. House File Number 2563 is herewith transmitted to the Senate with a request that the Senate appoint a like committee. Signed, Patrick Duffy Murphy, Chief Clerk, House of Representatives.
Senator Hurd for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate accede to the request of the House for a conference committee on House File Number 2563, and that a conference committee of 5 members be appointed by the subcommittees on conference committee on the part of the Senate to act with a like conference committee appointed on the part of the House.
On that motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The Secretary will read the next message.
Mr. President, I have the honor to announce the passage by the House of the following House files herewith transmitted. House File Number 3228. Signed, Patrick Duffy Murphy, Chief Clerk, House of Representatives.
Members, no action is required. We will now proceed to the 4th order of business, which is first reading of House bills. The House files have been given their first reading and referred as indicated. Moving to the 5th order of business, there's a committee report. The 5th order of business is reports of committees. There's a committee report to read at the desk. The Secretary will read the report.
Senator Rest from the Committee on Taxes, to which was re-referred Senate File Number 2374, a bill for an act relating to taxation, reports the same back with a recommendation that the bill be amended as follows, and when so amended, the bill do pass.
Senator Friends for a motion to adopt committee reports.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the committee reports printed in the program and read by the Secretary be adopted.
On that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Members, we will now proceed to the sixth order of business. That's the second reading of Senate bills. The Secretary will read the Senate file numbers.
Senate file number 2374.
The Senate file has been given its second reading. Now moving to the seventh order of business, second reading of House bills. The Secretary will read the House file number.
House file number 2435.
The House file has been given its second reading. Moving to the eighth order of business, which is introduction and first reading of Senate bills. The bills listed on today's introduction calendar are given their first reading and referred as indicated. Members, there's one change on the introduction calendar. If you look on page 1, that is Senate file number 3515. That bill has been referred to the Committee on Rules and Administration. As I mentioned, members, the bills listed on today's introduction calendar are given their first reading and referred as indicated. Moving on to the ninth order of business, motions and resolutions. We will adopt the author's motions as one motion. All in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Senate Resolution number 44 will be referred to the Committee on Rules and Administration, and there's no action that is required there. However, remaining under motions and resolutions, I will call on Senator Friends to designate special orders.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Members, pursuant to Rule 26, I designate the following bills be made special orders for immediate consideration. And members, the list is on your desk.
Members, that is correct. The special orders list is on your desk. We'll start with House File 1090. Senator Pappas.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, members. Senate file, or House File 1090, names the library construction grant after a long-serving House member, former Representative Mary Murphy. I have actually 4 connections to Mary, who I also served with in the House and in many other circumstances. First of all, everyone might not know this, but I actually lived in Duluth as a baby for a year, and that's right next door to Hermantown, where Mary was from. Mary and I both chaired and co-chaired at various times the Pensions Commission. And I do remember that when I first became chair, I turned to Mary one day and I said, Mary, I'm not sure about the Duluth Teachers Pension Fund, how long it's going to be viable. Maybe we should merge it into TRA. Well, I thought she was going to kill me right there. That pension fund had been around for 100 years, and Mary took a while to agree that that was a good move, and eventually that's what we did, and I think she forgave me. Also, I was minority lead in the Senate when she was chair of the bonding committee, and in 2020, watching Mary negotiate a bonding bill was like watching grass grow. Everything moved really, really slowly. And I've heard lots of stories about what she was like on bonding tours. Always a teacher, always trying to teach a lesson to her committee she chaired, or to community meetings and bonding meetings with local communities. But one thing that she really did champion was when her 5th grade class decided they wanted to name a state muffin, and that was the blueberry muffin. And a lot of us didn't know if that was such a great idea, mostly because of kind of the fun people make of us for spending our time naming things like blueberry muffins. But of course, it was Mary, so we had to do it, and that became law. A couple weeks ago, the House, when they passed this bill, had a huge commemoration for Mary. Her family was there, members of the community, and they invited former House members who, and had a very long presentation. Everyone told stories about Mary. And I also went to her funeral in Hermantown, of course, and saw how much she was beloved by both her extended family and her many friends and community members that she represented so aptly for so many years.
Any other discussion on House File 1090? Senator Kunesh.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to also just chime in on the gratitude of knowing Representative Mary Murphy. I was fortunate enough to sit next to her for a couple of years over in the Minnesota House floor. It was a total delight. There were lively discussions, there were disagreements, but one of the things that I think really bound Representative Mary Murphy and myself is not only was she an educator, and I myself am, but also her love of libraries. And so I'm really thrilled that there will be a library to commemorate her, for the rest of time. We talked a lot about the role of libraries in our communities and how important it is that we continue to support libraries and ensure that schools have proper librarians and the proper resources that are available. I will never forget the afternoon teas that she would lay out for us. I would see her open her drawer and pull out some napkins and some spoons. She'd have a little something sweet, and she'd ask me to go get her a cup of hot water for tea, and we would sit in the way back of the Minnesota House and have afternoon tea and talk about all the things that were important to us. But one of the really memorable things about Mary Murphy was at the end of every session, she would go up to the podium, the dais, and she would read a very, very, very special book and talk to the morality of that book. And that book is called Old Turtle. I don't know how many of you have seen it or read it. It's a beautiful, beautiful watercolor illustrated book written by Douglas Wood. And it's about the true understanding and compassion that in nature and in the world is so important. And it was always so poignant to have that read at the end of session, because it talks about how true understanding and compassion are absolutely crucial in the work that we do for healing our communities, for healing our state, for healing the relationships between all of us, and how important it is that we are working, I want to say peace in our state, but also recognizing the fact that the work that we do is based on compassion for each other. And Mary would go up there and she would read it so well and so eloquently, and to this day, I have not forgotten that very, very special relationship with Mary. And so when her passing came, it was truly a moment of sorrow, but also, in fact, an opportunity to remember all the years and all the advocacy and the work that Mary did, not just for her unique community, but for all of Minnesota. So I am so glad to hear about this library construction, and can't wait for it to open up. So thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Howell.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. And I just want to discuss a little bit about my relationship with the late Representative Mary Murphy. I came in to the other chamber in the House, and Representative Murphy was the chair of state government and state and local government, which also had the Veterans Committee in it. And Mr. President, I will say that I crafted what a freshman representative thought was the best veterans bill that you could make. You couldn't improve it. It was the best thing since sliced bread. And she gave me a hearing, and she could have killed it that day because I had a lot of opposition, but she laid it on the table, allowed me to go back and work with folks, and she brought it up to that and she heard the bill again. And of course, I still had opposition, and so she laid the bill on the table and let me work on it again. She brought it back a third time, and it finally passed the committee. Of course, it didn't go anywhere that year because this fine body over here wouldn't give the bill a hearing. 4 years later, or 3 years later, in the fourth year as I was over there, that bill finally became law, but it was a much better bill because it went through the process We worked across the aisle. It was a much better bill when it finally got passed. So thanks to her, I learned the lesson that good things never happen fast. It takes time to pass a good bill. But the real deal is we built a relationship during that process. And that relationship came back to when I was in the majority, she was in the minority, and she needed help getting a bill passed. So I picked that up, and we got that bill passed because we had built that relationship. And I think that's a lesson that many folks have forgotten about the relationships that we need in these bodies and in this legislature to work bipartisanly to get things done. And I think we need to go back and keep reminding ourselves about the lessons that Representative Murphy provided us about how to make things done, get things done, and how important that is. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Hochschild.
Thank you, Mr. President. Excuse me. Mary Murphy was one of a kind. I think those that knew her know that very well. But I didn't get a chance to serve with her, obviously. We did not get the chance to overlap. But I do want to talk about our community and where we're from and Mary's presence there. Mary was ubiquitous in the Northland and in Hermantown. She was literally, and I mean this, literally everyone's teacher. You would door knock, and you would knock on a door, and people would say, "Do you know Mary Murphy?" And I'd say, "Yes, of course I know Mary Murphy." And they said, "Oh, she was my 6th grade teacher," or "She was my, whatever teacher it was." Everyone knew Mary. She was everywhere, from church to volunteer events to community events to school events. Mary was ubiquitous in the Northland. And when I think about Mary's leadership and her role as a representative and my role as a senator from Hermantown, I think about the fact that you really couldn't find two people that are more different. Mary is a quiet leader, but she's also a very firm leader. I'm a little bit more assertive and out there. But I learned from Mary. I was a young city councilor in Hermantown, and Mary taught me that you don't always have to speak. You don't always have to say what's on your mind. Oftentimes, by not speaking, you're saying more than you would by speaking. Oftentimes, it's the conversations behind the scenes that make the biggest difference. And I think Mary taught a lot of us about that. And that really showed in our community in Hermantown. Hermantown is known as a former township. It's a rural community. And Mary grew up in a Jackson home, a Jackson Estate home, which is a home that was built during the FDR era. But Hermantown is also known as a new community, a place where young families are settling and it's becoming more suburbanized. Mary represented old Hermantown very well. She was the symbol of old township, Herman Township. And I represented new Hermantown, the new families that were making this community home, and how those two different groups really came together to make what makes Hermantown a special community. Mary also was a very strong leader in the Northland in the sense that she wasn't necessarily a member of the range delegation. And the range delegation got a lot of credit for, carrying a big stake and making a big difference. But I will tell you that Mary's impact on the Northland far exceeds any other legislator in our region. Every Friday, Mary would host a lunch in Hermantown where she would bring different stakeholders, community leaders together, different friends, family, so we would get the chance to have lunch. And I really cherish those opportunities that I had to have lunch with Mary and just hear her stories of being in the legislature as the second longest serving legislator in our history. But I think those lunches were also an example of her leadership, telling people, I'm not going to come to you. If you have something that you need to talk to me about, come meet me for lunch and let's have a conversation. I think that is another example of sort of her quiet leadership and giving people an opportunity to come to her, but not really being overly assertive in the work that she did. Mary met my son, Henry, when I was first elected to city council. And she is all about the kids. People that know her know that she started first with kids and with education. And from that point on, when she first met my son, every time I see her, of course, in my head, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm talking to Representative Murphy, one of the most powerful legislators that we have. I have to tell her all the things I need. And she would stop me immediately when I would come and talk to her, and she would say, how's Henry? It reminded me that politics and the work that we do is really important, but we have to remember our families. And she really taught me that really well. Mary Murphy most recently was the chair of redistricting for the state of Minnesota, and we know how that process goes. It ultimately was decided by some judges and didn't go through the normal process. But as a Hermantown City Councilor, I was adamant that Hermantown had to stay its own district separate from Duluth. And I remember going to Mary about that as she chaired redistricting, and she kind of just winked at me. She didn't say anything. She didn't, take the same position as me, but I think we both knew that she was looking out for Hermantown in that situation, making sure that we were well represented. I'm going to say something, maybe I shouldn't, I don't know, but, Mary was one of the oldest legislators that we had, and there were a lot of folks that thought she wasn't going to run for re-election. And I was a young city councilor, and my plan was, frankly, to run for the state house. And Mary ultimately made the decision to not run for re-election, to run for re-election. And I think about that a lot because I think about the circumstances that created. I don't know if I would have won that House seat or not, but I do know that I was able to win the Senate seat and help secure a majority in the state Senate. And I think about that circumstance a lot, that Mary running again for the state house created this domino effect in the Northland that had profound effects on our policy moving forward. Other people have already talked about it, but Mary's impact was really incredible. She helped us get a YMCA in Hermantown, a wellness center for our community. She was really involved in trail development and making sure that we had trails and a connection to the Munger Trail in the Northland. She helped establish the Fond du Lac Tribal Community College. And I think the most important thing is she helped establish Head Start in Minnesota. And when you think about what's happening at the federal level with the cuts that are happening to Head Start, I think we can look back on Mary, who had the foresight to say Head Start is important. Our children are important regardless of their economic means. We have to make sure that every kid has an opportunity for their future. And I think that's the biggest thing that I'll remember about Mary's legacy. It's that she was always looking out for the kids, and we all should remember that moving forward. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I think this is a very fitting honor for the legacy and service of Representative Mary Murphy. I had the opportunity to serve with her briefly in the other body, and one of the leadership lessons I learned from Representative Murphy was how to lead committee work. And Representative Murphy had the opportunity to lead many committees in the Minnesota House over her tenure, and instead of consolidating power, trying to develop the bill on her own, she would oftentimes give homework assignments, just like a teacher, to members of the committee, both Republican and Democrat, and ask them to work on those sections of the bill and come back and check in with her as she constructed the bills for that committee. And I think, Mr. President, that is why one of the many reasons why she was an effective legislator during her tenure, is that she didn't try to consolidate or hog power. She tried to empower her colleagues that were with her. She wanted their efforts, their insights, the feedback from their constituents to be incorporated in the work that she was doing in the Minnesota legislature. And I think that goes back to her being a great listener and expecting that others would listen to each other as well. And I think especially as we're in the final weeks of this legislative session, taking that legacy, those leadership lessons into account will serve this body well.
Seeing no additional discussion, the Secretary will give the bill its third reading.
House File Number 1090, a bill for an act relating to capital investment, renaming the Library Construction Grant Program.
Third reading. Any other discussion before the last vote we hear is that of Senator Pappas, if there's anything else she wants to say? Seeing none, Senator Pappas, any final words before we vote?
Mr. President, I just appreciate all the comments from the members on the floor, and I think we covered the legacy of Mary Murphy thoroughly. Thank you.
The Secretary will give House File 1090, will take the roll on House File 1090 for final passage. Senator French, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. I report Senator Fateh votes yes.
Senator Fateh votes aye.
Senator Marty votes yes.
Senator Marty votes aye.
Senator Dibble votes yes.
Senator Dibble votes aye. Senator Jasinski, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Duckworth votes aye.
Senator Duckworth votes aye.
Mr. President.
Senator Jasinski.
Senator Johnson votes aye.
Senator Johnson votes aye. Senator Friends.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd also like to report that Senator Murphy votes aye.
Senator Murphy votes aye. Anyone else? All senators having voted? Who desires to vote? The Secretary will close the roll. There have been 50 ayes and 14 noes. The bill is passed and its title agreed to. Senator Friends, for a motion to recess.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I move that the Senate recess to the call of the President. Only a few members will be needed to return to the chamber later today. Thank you, Mr. President.
On that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The Senate is now in recess.